Hi ladies and gentlemen, hi vocal students, hi vocal teacher. In this particular program I'm going to discuss with you an important matter. What vocal suggestions we supposed to listen to and what suggestions we're supposed to reject. These are the questions that I'm asked oftenly in my blog and the letters that some YouTube listeners and voice students send to me. And so I would like to answer to these questions. We often hear expressions like send your voice to the last person of the audience. Put it there, put it there, put it back like if you're singing, like the audience is behind you. And many so-called empirical suggestions I mentioned in my previous programs, like sing the high note with the sensation of smelling a rose. What sensations should we trust and what sensations should we reject? My short answer to this question might surprise you, because I would suggest to take all the empirical suggestions, try them, and those who don't work, reject them. Let's first understand really clearly, 9 of the empirical suggestions are objective truth. There are subjective sensations of the singer who promote them. An example, a singer learns how to sing and learns it successfully. Over time, he becomes a teacher. He wants to teach successfully, and he is very happy with his own success. So he is absolutely sure and never even asks himself a question: is that sensations that he has are objective? Can he imply these sensations on every student that he teaches? This is a question I think will be answered differently depending on intelligence of a singer, intelligence of a personality who is teaching. Of course, teachers has to be intelligent. The only vocal talent is not enough to be a successful teacher. So that is the question of knowing your craft, but being also an intelligent person who understands the subjectivity of everything he did before. Of course, we are from the same planet and we have some similar sensations. There's no doubt about it. The sensations in the mask area, sensations in the nasal area, maybe sensations in the chest, and other sensations, vocal sensations, we'd say. As I already mentioned before, when the teacher suggests that his student's sensations should be identical with his own, he might not say that directly, but he insisted in action, a lot of students will be in trouble and confused. Lily Lemon's attempt to categorize the sensations and put it in a very comprehensive scientific chart of sensations. The tenor should be feeling his high C in this particular point, and soprano and whatever. It was a breakthrough, because before nobody really approached voice scientifically. And again, Garcia approached it from the point of the system of our vocal system and how it works. But on the Lily Lemon's effort, it was done unprecedentedly. Lily Lemon did it in a very fresh and revolutionary way. Nevertheless, when Lily Lemon's book and of sensations and placements and the precise points were examined by many scientific studies, including vocal scientific studies plus scientific acoustician studies, they all found her school, or exactly these particular points, not the whole book, but a very pseudo-scientific, because they realized that these sensations, no matter how accurately they put in a book, are subjective. And the tenors are not going to feel the same points of the high C in the same place, in the same spot. So that was and until now, if you look at the dictionary of vocal terms, a huge dictionary of vocal terms, this theory is placed as pseudo-theory that has nothing to do with the truth. Nevertheless, in spite of the fact that the science disproved so-called empirical schools or pseudo-scientific schools, basically today most of the teachers, voice teachers, are taking Lily Lemon's approach. Lily Lemon's approach of the precision of the certain sensations of the certain notes. This theory, though it was acclaimed pseudo, is basically used on unprecedented level and not without distortion also, because Lily Lemon's intentions were to actually make sure that singer understands his own sensations, and when he sings he should not be dependent, at least too much dependent, on the whole, on the auditorium he sings into. He should discover his own sensations and feelings, and according to this it will be the guide for him to sing in any place, in a small church, on a huge Carnegie Hall, anywhere else, because he would know the points of his sensations regardless to the whole he's singing, and there is nothing wrong with that. Lily Lemon was absolutely right of pointing out that we should really understand subjectively how do we sense when we sing and what we sense, because we cannot sing in the same place all the time. We cannot get used to one. You're lucky if you're the soloist of the particular opera company and you sing only there, but you know, it's very unrealistic in opera, because opera is really international. I'd like you to understand how complex this problem is, because I'm going to give you just one suggestion that very popular. Probably hear that from master classes, you hear that from prominent teachers, you hear that from not so prominent teachers, you hear that from the students who wants to become teachers, and like parents, they just say phrases they don't really understand. This is the phrase that you hear a lot, and let's examine this phrase. You hear in that form or in another when the teacher complains about the projection, or he feels that the student does not have enough projection in his voice. He says something like this: try to send your voice to the last person in the audience, deaf person in the audience, whatever, you know. Now, is that a correct suggestion, or is that an incorrect suggestion? And the answer is not simple. It will depend on an individual student. In other words, with student A it might work perfectly or imperfectly, but it might work, and in student B it will never work. To some students it will improve the projection. To others it will put their voice into nasal cavities, into nasal resonance, and it might improve projection, but it will be a nasal projection. If you don't mind it, if you like to sing nasally, then it's up to you. And to my experience, the majority of the students, these suggestions may bring a total lack of support. Total lack of support, and therefore it will never improve, of course, the projection. I often said that I'm more against these type of suggestions than for it, because they bring more trouble than goodies. But again, as I mentioned just at the beginning, we should try all empirical suggestions and reject those that don't work. From the scientific point of view, the suggestions that I just mentioned about sending your voice somewhere in the far it has no scientific background, because we all know, and I discussed that in projection video, that the projection does not depend on how you try to send your voice over there, because it will depend on the acoustic resonance inside you. That's what Lululemon was saying. If you know how to do it, how to create good resonance, it will project the voice. It has nothing to do with you trying to send some molecules of air to the last person, to the audience, because as we know, wave does not disperse itself through molecules, it's through movements. So when you send a voice, in order to be projective, the less air comes from your mouth is better. It's a known fact. So the projection does not work like a hose with the water. You know, what you try to project your water and to flower your garden. But nevertheless, I'm not saying that this suggestion works sometimes because of the complexity of the human psychology, and the human subconsciousness does react sometimes to imagery rather than to objective things. And here we come to a very important question. How do we learn vocals? How do we learn voice technique? As you know by now, empirical suggestions work sometimes. Sometimes they don't work. Sometimes they are big trouble. Science, as it is very correct, but it's very abstract, you know, and sometimes can be dangerous too. For example, if you, with certain students, insist on keeping their larynx stable, it may cause a larynx concern. Students will try to concentrate his mind onto larynx, and by doing this they can make the larynx very stiff and very rigid, and therefore it will not help you to keep it, or if it does, or if it will, it still be a bad sound. So as you see, imagery, science describes things perfectly well, but it cannot give you a tip, a real tip, how to do it. So empirical suggestions are more tippy, if you like. If you, they can give you more truth, but they can also give you more trouble if you believe religiously in some particular suggestions. So be careful about it. So science is correct, but it's too abstract to bring it to our learning successfully. And then we might come to another question. What's the quality for a Poggio teacher? What qualities a Poggio teacher should have? I put it in 5 paragraphs. This is my own observation, and I'd like to share it with you. Number 1 is ability to understand students' natural voice. Don't have a prejudice about certain things. Do not try to put your student's voice in a category that he doesn't belong to. For that, of course, the teacher should be able to rediscover, if necessary, the student's natural resonance. And jumping from that, he would go and develop his natural resonance into whatever the student wants it to be developed. Whether it's classical voice, whether it's another type of style of music, but develop this according to his natural abilities. And I already stated many times that I don't know the survey, I don't know the percentage, but it seems to me that there are quite a lot of singers in the world that are not singing with their natural voices. You can hear that by the voices, you know, it's simple to hear. So I wouldn't say it's like 50% or 50%. It's really, nobody can say that, but we know by history of displacement that this is not such a exceptional thing to misplace somebody's natural voice and put it, let's say, a tenor into baritone category and a baritone into tenor category. That also sometimes is not the teacher's fault. Is a student so absolutely sure he wants to be a tenor, or he wants to be a baritone, he wants to be a dramatic soprano, nothing else. And having this stubborn student, it's very difficult to convince him. Maybe it's not even possible to convince him to rediscover his natural voice and try to sing naturally. Number two is, after discovering natural resonance, the ability to develop that resonance consistently and according to the style the teacher teaches. So therefore, bring it to of necessary range and power in the style that the student is taking courses. And of course, that is number three, but it's also maybe could be a number one. Understanding that we sing by support. Let's put it general in English, support. You know that I'm advocating appoggio, but by appoggio we can also call, it's the words, we can call it the best support, if we say. Appoggio, diaphragmical support, or why I'm not saying diaphragmical support necessarily, because I'm talking generally maybe about any style you can possibly imagine. If you're singing sul fiato, which does not require diaphragmical support, then it's fine. But if we're talking about classical music and diaphragmical support and eventually appoggio, that is important to know. And number four, which also can come as number one, is using only one placement, natural placement, making one register singing, not 3 or 4 divisions in a voice, only one register singing, which is possible with appoggio. And of course, the most important thing is number 5, because it's knowing all these things and having it as a teacher, you need also ability to pass this knowledge over your students through exercises, not only through talking, of course, through exercises and through other means. And this is the most important quality for appoggio singers that I described. Since we touched the moment of teachers' quality, and I have to give you an advice. They are maybe by psychology, by typical personalities, there are different types of students. They're loyal students, loyal. If they get a teacher, no matter what, they will stick with this teacher till they're successful or till they're totally destroyed. There are jumpers. Student will take a few lessons from that teacher, a few lessons from another teacher, and then a few lessons from that teacher. That is the worst kind, because you cannot understand and you cannot really profit from any teacher if you study with him less than 6 months. Because within this 6 months, as I say, you will start to understand teacher's terminology. Because as we know, the words are empty. You need to experience these words in order to understand. So this experience comes only after 6 months. If you are a very talented student, it still has to take some physical time. So within 6 months. And if within 6 months you don't have, your situation is worsened, your sound got worse, your support got worse, then you might think of changing a teacher. But please don't think of just changing teachers like love. So I'll just get some ideas. I would say if it was a philosophy, maybe it would be interesting to have 3 dialogues with one great philosopher and then join another and to have an argument with another one. But in teachers, in learning voice, it's not the same thing. You have to understand the teacher, and the teacher has to understand you. He doesn't tell you that because he's a teacher, but he has to learn from you. If he's a real teacher, whether he's saying it openly or whether he's doing it secretly, he is a good teacher only when he learns from you. So he needs some time to learn from you too. So and you need absolutely time to learn from him. And so for that reason, I'm telling you. But 6 months is very relative thing. Of course, it could go up to 1 year. And from the point of view of changing teachers like gloves, that's not going to help you in your understanding of your own voice. Because as you know, most of the singers are confused with terminologies. Terminologies are just symbols of words, or words. They don't, and often don't represent the objective reality. And so it is very possible, if you have a teacher who claims to be a mascara teacher, for example, and he insists on putting the voice in a mascara, but at the same time he will not allow you to be nasal, and will always watch if you support your voice well, this teacher is actually an appoggio teacher, not knowing that. So you see, you need to get understanding of what the teacher's mind is, what his taste is. It's important, the teacher's taste, because that you will lead you to according to his taste. You know, to be very objective. Again, what I'm saying in the number 1 statement, that discovery of natural voice is very important. Natural voice, natural resonance. Your natural resonance. Not somebody else's natural resonance, but yours, and it's very individual. Let's say you do something and your teacher tells you, now I want you to put it more resonant here in a mask, or you know, do it to say, and you do it. I said, no. That's not what I mean. And that's confusing. But at least you have a teacher who hears that your nasality is way over the level that is allowed for the beautiful sound, and he is controlling you, telling you, please don't go there. So you might learn from this teacher much more because his foundation is right. His words are maybe confusing, and even maybe his theory is confusing, but his sensations and his expertise is fine. So by saying wrong words, but actually knowing the real sound, they're less dangerous than those who, let's say, are appoggio claimers, or we support, only support, and they do not or fail to hear obvious nasality or obvious disconnection of support with particular singers. Then it's total nonsense, because yes, my teacher is a appoggio teacher, and let's say he comes and he sings without support and with a lot of nasality. I would doubt that he really has a appoggio teacher in that sense. So you understand the complexity of this, and it is important to understand that we are learning from 1, 2, maximum 3 teachers in the world, unless you're a jumper, you know. So we need to get used to a certain terminology and to understand its meaning. And its meaning lies in our own sensations, in our own experience. So the teacher, the best role of a teacher is to bring us to these experiences and to improve them, because he's hearing us objectively. If he has a good taste, he will bring us towards good voice. If he has bad taste, then unfortunately we're relying upon this taste of a teacher. It might bring us to his own taste. Whether it's bad or not, you will decide later on. I just repeat what I said in different words. Whether a teacher or a singer is educated on appoggio, a style of singing and technique, or placements type of singing and technique, the words are less important than his ear and his taste. The rest is, as Shakespeare said once,
quando mamma t'ha fatta, quando mamma t'ha fatta, vuoi sapere come facette, vuoi sapere come facette.